Welcome back to our Firestop coffee break training. This video is going to introduce you to the Hot Rod Type X Firestop device and explain how to use this device in a head-to-wall joint with a 1 or 2 hour fire-rated gypsum wall that lands under a flat concrete deck. For something so simple, it's amazing how easy it is to create a life safety issue on a project. If you've seen the other videos on sealants and sprays, then you know exactly what I mean. The same way those videos were designed to help you understand the products and what they should look like when they're installed correctly, as well as some common installation errors that we've seen in the field, we'll do the same thing with the Hot Rod Type X and the rest of these products so that you'll know what it looks like when it's done right. And you'll have a few tips to avoid some potential installation errors. So let's get to it. This is the Hot Rod Type X. You can see it's a compressible Firestop material. There's this foam squishy bit, and then there's this intumescent strip. Just in case you don't remember, intumescent means that this is a material that is designed to expand when it's exposed to higher temperatures, such as in a fire scenario. So if there's a fire, this little black strip will expand and fill the joint, stopping fire, heat, and toxic gases from passing through the wall. The red compressible foam bit serves several purposes. It holds the strip into the wall because it's friction fit between the top of the drywall and the underside of the concrete deck. It's compressed and fit into the deflection gap, so it can seal off any imperfections in an uneven deck. The Hot Rod Type X has been tested to the 5th edition of UL 2079 and offers an L rating. If your project has smoke barriers, you'll want to check on all of the Firestop details to make sure that they meet the L rating requirements, and not just your rated joints, your through penetrations as well. The second thing that the Hot Rod Type X helps with is the Stc values. STC stands for Sound Transmission Class. It's important if you have noisy neighbors, and the STC requirements are actually part of the building codes. The International Building Code has a minimum requirement for the STC values that you'll find on unit separations in multi-unit residential buildings. The Firestop devices are obviously different from the traditional head-of-wall Firestop solutions that you've probably seen in the field. So let's take a close look at the UL listed detail, one step at a time. Our detail today is HWD 0624. Let's start with the information block at the top of our Firestop detail. You can see that it was tested or possibly revised and updated on October 28, 2019. I know that this is the most up-to-date system as of the summer of 2020 because I went onto the UL website. You'll want to do this from time to time with the older Firestop details so that you can be sure the details that are submitted are the most current. Let's dig into the detail, starting with the information block at the top of our detail. We see that this system can be used for both 1 and 2 hour rated gypsum walls. When we look at the nominal joint width section, you can see that it lists 3 different options. You can also see a lot of differences in the movement requirements as well. That tells me that as we read through the detail, there will be different applications that work for different solutions. What you need to pay attention to here is that these different options mean that we'll have to read the detail carefully. Let's look at the information item 1. This will be about our rated floor. You can see that it'll be a minimum of 4.5 inch lightweight or normal weight concrete, or possibly a hollow core concrete slab. Now we'll look at the specifics of a rated wall. You'll need to review the actual UL listed details for all of the specifics of the connections, framing members, and studs. But you can see here that you're able to use any U400 or V400 wall assembly as long as the rest of the system requirements noted in the detail match the field application. That means that you need to have the right framing members as well as the right widths. You have to have the right gauge as well. And that's easy to check also because it's marked on the framing members. Then you have to be sure that you have the right size joint, the right movement in the joint. Are you starting to get the picture? You have to check everything. One thing that's different in this particular head-to-wall Firestop detail is that it lists a number of devices that can be used to protect the joint area. So let's take a look at those. The allowable joint size and movement capacity will vary depending on the product being installed. You know that from looking at the header block of the Firestop detail. So let's see how this plays out when we dig into the specifics a little bit more. This section of the UL listed detail shows us the Firestop installation. The Hot Rod Type X is 3A2, so that means that maximum installed joint width is 3/4 inch, and the movement is 80% compression and 33% extension. Remember in our discussion about movement, if we have a smaller joint, We can typically expect less movement if we're working with the traditional Firestop sealants, but it's not so dramatic when we're looking at the Firestop devices, and it's less significant because we have a greater movement percentage allowance. So if you need a 1/4 inch movement with a sealant system that allows for 15% movement, you'll need to have a larger joint. Whereas the Firestop system for the devices that we're looking at in this series have higher movement percentages, so the size of the joint is less of a concern. As you look at this, I want you to check out that line. It says that the foam is sized for 1 and 2 hour rated walls. The 1 hour wall will have 1 layer of 5/8 inch drywall, and a 2 hour wall will have 2 layers. I should mention that there are 2 different sized Hot Rod Type X Firestop devices. This sample that I have is a Hot Rod Type X for a 1 hour wall. This piece is 1 inch by 1/2 inch. So when it's installed, if the drywaller wants to finish the area around the deflection gap, there's an 1/8 of an inch space for the drywall mud. If the wall's not going to be finished, then it can be left exposed. Then there's the Hot Rod Type X for 2 hour walls. That has a 1 inch by 1 inch profile, so it will fit in the deflection gap and leave only a small gap for the drywall mud if it's going to be finished. But what if your contractor runs out of the 1 inch by 1 inch product and they install this one on a 2 hour wall? Is that okay? Well, let's talk about it for a minute. The dose of intumescent material is the same on both products. The reason that the 2 hour product is wider has to do with the way the wall will be finished. If the installer is not going to apply drywall mud to finish the wall, then they can use either product. You just have to be sure that they push the 1 inch by 1.5 inch device all the way back against the track. So that brings you through the Firestop detail, but there's a few more critical things that I want you to look at when you're looking at your field installation, and they're not going to be called out in your Firestop detail. Let's go over them. First, you should know that the Hot Rod Type X comes in 4-foot lengths. This sample is just short, so it's easier to show you. Since you know how these fire-rated walls are tested from the previous videos, you can imagine how critical it is to make sure that there are no gaps. That means that when your 4-foot lengths come together, they need to have tight butt joints. When the corners come together, they need to be tight. There can't be any gaps above the Hot Rod Type X to the concrete or below to the rated wall. We're almost done, but before we let you go, let's do a quick recap. When you're looking for the field installations, first, you should not see this black intumescent strip when it's installed. Check the seams every 4 feet to make sure that you have tight butt joints. Check the inside corners to make sure they're tight. Check the outside corners to make sure they're tight as well. Firestop is required on both sides, so check both sides. If you're using the device for shaft wall assembly, please make sure that you're looking at the detail for shaft wall assembly. And if you're not using these Firestop devices, please be sure to watch the other videos on sealants and sprays. The same way that we gave you a good idea of what to look for to ensure that the Hot Rod Type X is installed correctly, we'll walk you through how to be sure that the sealants and sprays are installed correctly as well. If you have exit stairs, there is important information in videos on exit stairs as well. Thank you for spending this time with me. I hope the information in this video serves you well. If it did, please share it with your teams, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. If you want things done right, we want to help. If you have questions about the Hot Rod Type X, I'll give you the contact information at the end of the video, and I invite you to watch the other head of wall device videos so that you can be sure to catch all of the information that we've packed into the other 3 for you. One last thing. I'd like to ask that if you found this video useful, please share, like, and comment on your favorite social media so that others can see this as well. We'll see you here for your next coffee break.